Great vehicle for that.
When you go into making a record, do you kind of have an idea for what it's going to sound like, and then you go for it, or is it just...
Sometimes I think like, especially as time has gone on, John much more so, you know, very, you know, he's very capable in the studio and have an idea of what's wanted, but then he has to deal with all of us, you know what I mean? And which I'm sure can be frustrating with him, like if we disagree on the way something sounds. But yeah, you know, on Blood Sugar, that was the first record, like we'd always kind of left it up to producers before that. I mean, very much, but it always felt kind of confusing to me once we'd get in there. I'd, like hear these things and not really know how to articulate what I wanted it to sound like. I probably didn't spend the time learning how to say what I wanted it to sound like.
Yeah.
But it always would kind of get in there and it'd be this sort of mystery, and sometimes it would come out the way you liked it and some kind of felt stiff and weird, and I didn't know, how are we playing stiff and weird? Like, what is it, you know? But when we made Blood Sugar, which was the first record we made with Rick Rubin, and Rick was like, look, it always sounds like they're using too much studio technology. When you guys jam in a room, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
He's like, nothing else sounds like that. You guys playing together, feeling off each other, the tension, the release, the improvisation, it's happening. You know what I mean? And we knew that already.
Yeah.
But he was the first one that said, let's put up mics and capture that sound. Let's make it sound like you guys playing together in a room. And that's what it sounds like. You know, and let's not, you know, and with everything, you know, it just sounds, it's just us fucking playing. Yeah, there's some overdubs and whatnot, and all the records pretty much have, since then, for the most part, have been that. You know, with, you know, varying degrees of experimentation and overdubs and, you know, yeah, more so on some records than others.
Lollapalooza that happened in '92, and that all these seminal bands with you guys headlining, I mean, that was like a real moment in time then, that time period. And Blood Sugar Sex Magik was such a massive record. Did you guys realize that you kind of had gone to this next level?
I mean, I knew that we were doing good and was making some money and bought a house and stuff, but you know, we had been a band already for almost 10 years, you know, and it was just gigs, man. You know what I mean? Like, and we had been, the thing is, like, everything had been so gradual from the beginning. You know, it's like I look at it like we were doing the same thing the whole time and always trying to get better. You know, and maybe the music as it grew fit the rooms that we were playing, you know. But we started off with clubs, we're touring in a van, you know, sleeping in the van with all the equipment, playing like, I remember one point 63 shows in 63 cities in 63 days.
God. Like
nonstop, sleep, no, you know what I mean? Just like going, rocking. You know, we were so young. And then it was like, you know, we got a U-Haul trailer. So then we could lay down on a seat in the van, or if there's, you know, 2 rows of seats, 2 guys on the floor, 2 guys in the van, and a little room in the back, you could lay down. You know, huge development, U-Haul trailer. You know, then a mobile home, there's a bed in the back. You know what I mean? 3 guys could lay on the fucking bed, or 2 guys, or whatever, and there's little couches, you know what I mean? And then from that to the first bus, you know, then we're playing theater, 2,000 seat theaters, and we have a bus with bunks. That was the huge thing. You can sleep. You know what I mean? And then, you know, and then a nice bus, you know what I mean? And then we get bigger. You know what I mean? It's all this stuff. It's like we had been playing for so long, always advancing slowly, always each tour, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. And it's still like that. It's still the same. Like the last tour we did was our first stadium tour. We played plenty of stadiums, but our first, and people, you know, a difference between an arena and a stadium is different. Arena's 20,000, stadium's 70,000.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you go play stadiums all over the world, like it's still growing. And it's like every step of the way. So when we did that first Lollapalooza, it was just the next logical step, what it felt like at the time. And it felt like another festival. We had been playing festivals like that in Europe forever. They didn't tour, you know, in one place, but we had done all the festivals in Europe. So it was just, you know, it was a cool gig. You know, it was cool. It was fun to be with all the other bands. It was, you know, playing music, you know, and it was cool. Like, you know, we toured with Ice Cube. I loved Ice Cube. At the time, I thought he was the best rapper that ever lived. You know, he had just put out his second album, Death Certificate.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, we're playing with Ice Cube. You know what I mean? And, you know, it was really, really fun. Yeah, very, yeah. So I guess I was conscious that the music that we were playing and that the bands were playing had become mainstream. Because all of a sudden, it wasn't like I was looking down at the cool kids.
Right.
I was looking down at everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was different. It was people that weren't from the cool scene, the rock scene. It was people who were just like, this is the big thing. Like it's what you go to. You know, like in every town, it was full of people who hadn't been part of the, of like the rebellious alternative underground. It wasn't underground anymore. Let's put it that way, and it hasn't been since.